you very much, Aziz. Appreciate it. Benjamin, I see you're on. Thank you. Please stay after. Okay. I got to make it really quick after. I got another appointment I got to get to yet tonight. Okay. So a couple things we want to point out before we actually get into the assignment. And I hope we got a lot of people on here. I asked everybody to attend tonight, so I hope everybody's on. Aziz, can you see how many people we've got on?
16.
Oh, geez. Well, you want to know why people aren't doing very well? We know why. Okay. Even when I tell them to do things, they don't do it. So a question came up about the attachment field. And I've mentioned this a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit longer explanation of why you got to be very careful with attachments. First off, there are some problems with saving them. And if you ever add something to an attachment and then delete it and try to add it back, we find that sometimes it won't let it add back for some reason. This is one of the reasons why I'm trying to get away from the attachments. We'll use them yet this semester, but I'm going to ask you never to use them that often, okay? When we do use them, they'll really be for things like putting a picture on the screen. That'll be it, all right? And actually, there is another way to do it. I'll show you that toward the end of the semester. But we'll use attachment controls. I just want to make sure you understand that there is a better way to do it. What happens with an attachment is that when you put something into the field, it actually becomes part of the database file. And whatever size that thing was, that's going to be added to the database file. Guess what? Even if you delete it, it's still going to assign that much space to it. All right, now there is a way to garbage collect that will decrease the size for things that are no longer there. And I'm going to send you an email about compact and repair sometime, so you know that. If we got enough time tonight, I may actually show you it. But we don't want, the reason we really don't like attachment files is because there is a size limitation for those ACCDB files that we're producing. Turns out they can't get bigger than 2 gigabytes. Now, somebody told me that in the new version of Access with the SQL Server Jet Engine, that limitation is gone. I haven't been able to prove that. I haven't found any documentation on it either. All right, but think about it. You know, if you're putting a Word file, it's probably not going to be that big. If you're putting a JPEG image, it's probably not that much memory. If you try to put a video in there, it could eat it all up, right? Videos easily get over 1 gigabyte. You know, I know the videos for each of these lectures are over 1 gig probably. So anyway, the better way to do it is really to have a pointer from your system out to a file that exists out in File Explorer. Truthfully, I don't even know why Microsoft put an attachment field in their software. I don't know anybody else who does this. Almost all of them would give you some way to link to a file from a record. And later on in the semester, I will actually show you how you could do things like that. Actually just link to the file rather than have the file to be part of the database itself. So in other words, you'll store the link and then you'll click on that and it'll go out to File Explorer and open up your file for you. Kind of like how we do with the hyperlink field. So anyway, just be careful on attachments. You know, try to use them very sparingly. Again, when I ask you to do one, it's usually going to be so you can have a photo on your record somewhere. And now in the homework assignments, again, I might ask you to do it a couple times just to get familiar with them. But after that, we're not going to worry about them too much. Okay. I mentioned compact and repair. I may as well show you that right now. I'm going to share my screen. All right. And what that means is, let's say you're doing something, and I've mentioned this before. Access is a wonderful environment. It's great for doing prototyping. But when you prototype, you will sometimes create things and then delete things, or add data and then delete data and do all, you know, and as you do that, you'll see that the size of your ACCDB file will start getting bigger, bigger, and bigger, and bigger, and bigger. Okay. I mean, I had a student a few semesters ago turn in an ACCDB file that was like 1.7 gigabytes. Oh my gosh, you know, I mean, it took forever to open it, because it was so big, and it turned out it was just garbage. It was stuff that he had left over. He had deleted things, he never compacted it. Okay. So we want to compact our database when we've done a lot of deleting, and modifying of things, to get it down to the size where it's basically its optimal size given the information it has in it. Okay. The other thing that button will do is repair. What that's handy for is if there's something that you've tried everything you could think of, and for some reason the thing is still not working correctly, hit that. Sometimes that will take care of the problem. The issue that we had about we deleted a field and saved the table, and then we went and we opened up the data sheet and the field was still there. I went over and did a compact and repair, and it fixed it. Okay. I don't usually have to do that very often. And as Access has matured, I don't have to repair as often, but I do compact, and I compact all the time. So usually before I submit my file, before I turn in my file, I want to do a compact and repair. Where do you do that from? Well, the easy one, the one I always remember, is you just hit the file up here. And you see there's a big button that says compact and repair database. Just click that, and now it's repaired. Okay, it's compacted and repaired. You might notice it just closed down the navigation pane. That's because I've actually got this compiled, and so what it's doing, it's running it right away too. But if I think it's up there in database options or something like that. Is the button's also there, but I always just remember the one that's under file and hit that. So if you get, like I said, if you get in trouble, you might want to try hitting that and see if it fixes your problem. If you get error messages that make sense to you, try that. But typically, again, I don't get those very often. Mainly what I use it for is to really just bring down and optimize the size of my files. So, okay. Your assignment was due tonight. I know most of you turned it in. Those of you who didn't, boy, I feel sorry for you. Okay. You're off to a terrible start in this class, and that's not a good thing to do. I haven't graded any of them, but I did take a look at some of them just to see, what's going on. And Aziz and Benjamin and I will be doing those kind of things here in the next day, getting that graded for you. By the way, after this class, the solution will be posted. You'll be able to go out there and get it, okay, and do a comparison of yours to it to see what you did wrong, and how you really you should have done it, okay? Usually most of the errors that people make are on the naming conventions. You can see how I actually really name those fields, and you'll be able to compare yours to it and really learn how to do that. Please start learning the naming conventions. We're not taking off a lot of points for errors in the naming conventions if we see that you really tried to do them, okay? If you ignored them completely, then we're taking off a lot of points. You may not even get a score. So, because I've warned you about that over and over. The one thing I did notice on the few that I looked at is a lot of you made a lot of your fields required fields. All right, now think about that. A required field is a field that has to have a value in order for the record to be established, to be saved, right? Okay. If you have way too many fields that are required, you're going to have to actually have data in all those fields in order to save the record. I'll tell you, myself, when I make a subject data table, I try to make as few required fields as possible, okay? Now, we know that the fields of the alternate key have to be required. That's a must, all right? But nothing else really has to be, all right? If you want to make another field required, fine, okay? But once you've got, think about what could happen, okay? Say I'm an HR company. I've got employees that are coming in, all right? I'm going to give an employee ID. Okay, well, there's an alternate key that I could put in. That's required, okay? Their name, well, I'll probably know that right away too. I'll make that required. But anything else after that, I may not know it. I may not know their birth date. I may not know their addresses or phone numbers. I may not know who they're going to be working for, or anything like that. But I want to establish a record because they were taking them on as an employee. Later, I'll come back and fill that information out. Try to limit the number of required fields, because the more required fields you have, the more you are actually going to be required to put in there in order to put a record in there. All right. Now, if you decide, oh no, the nature of my thing is I need most of these, or else it doesn't make sense to even have a record, fine. If it's logically fine to do that, that's great. Okay. The other thing, I mentioned this before, is make sure your required fields are early in the record. Okay. So in the data sheet, like I've got on the screen right now, where I got organization name, that's a required field. I want that first. Okay. The day I sent the application, I'm making that a required field. I got that next to it. The type of receipt that it's getting, that's I want these three things I need to know right away, or else it doesn't make sense to have a record. So I'm going to make those all required, and I'm going to put them all together. They're going to be the first things you see. Later, when we build a form, they'd be on the first tab of the form right away. They'd be one right after the other. Okay. But all these other ones that are not required, they could be in whatever order makes sense, but you do want to make them in a somewhat logical order. Think about the data that they may have. Think about data that goes together. If I'm doing an address, for instance, I wouldn't want the street and the city to be separated by 7 or 8 other fields that don't make any sense. I want them to be together, right? So think about the logical groupings that you would have of your fields in a single record, and keep those together. All right. Later, we'll see that another smart way to logically group things together are by having tabs that are associated with those kind of subgroups of records. Okay. So that's just something I want to point out right away. And then the unique and required message, I already sent you an email about that. Sometimes, especially in my older examples, you'll see a message that says unique and required in the alternate key field, and maybe required in this field here. And I already told you that there's a problem with that it only really works on short text fields and memo fields. And in memo fields, you probably don't want to do it anyway. All right. It's just a message that goes there to indicate that that's required. But the problem is it doesn't work on all kinds of fields. It doesn't work on date fields, for instance. It doesn't work on any field where you have an input mask. So I've been getting away from them. I've taken them out, I think, of all your homework assignments. Okay. But you'll still see in some of the tutorials, I've got them in there. It's your option. If you want to do that, you can. I sent you an email about how it's done. If you want to try to do that, that's your option. What I've been doing instead is I've been saying required in the caption rather than down here. I find people get confused. They think that if it says required here in the body, in the cell itself, they think it's actually data that's been entered already, a default value, and it's not. It's just a message. All right. So I've been trying to get away from that a little bit. A lot of my old examples still have it in there, but the new stuff and the new assignments for this semester won't have them in there. You won't see that there. You can put it in there if you want to, but and again, feel free. I won't take points off if you do it. But at the same time, I would encourage you probably not to do it. So I think that's it. Yeah, Aziz, can you think of anything else we needed to front load them on?
I think that's all.
Okay, I'm going to just repeat what we said before we started recording. Get your stuff in on time. I don't accept late work. Okay, there's a good reason for that. All right, we will expose the solution as soon as we possibly can. Tonight we'll wait till the end of class, but most classes, by the time I get on, the solution's already out there. Okay, so we do not, okay, you don't email them to us. Okay, you have to get it in through Blackboard. Otherwise we can't record the grade. So good. Okay. Some of you think that sneaking it in through an email after the thing's gone down, you'll get you by. No, it won't. Okay. We will just give you a 0. That's it. You've been warned. You were given plenty of time to do this last assignment. I mean, even some of you really doesn't know what they were doing could have gotten it done in just a few hours. You were given 2 weeks. Okay. If you wait till the last minute, hey, you know what? You're not going to pass this class because it just gets harder from here on out. It's more time consuming. I promise you, you need this time. So that's the other thing I wanted to bring up is the fact that I'm going out there and looking at the videos and looking at the files and seeing that most of you aren't looking at them. You're not downloading the stuff until the last minute. You're not watching the videos. I give you the last lab night, the tutorial videos, only 6 people watched them. All right. Now I know you could do it later on, or maybe you did it earlier. If you did that, that's great. Okay. All right. But I know you guys, okay? You're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. Then you finally try to do it all in just an hour. And you know, it ain't working, is it? All right. There's a cadence here, and I have set up that cadence for you. I know how long it should take, even somebody who really is having a hard time. And I give you plenty of time to do this stuff. If you procrastinate, if that's the way you are, you know what? Not only should you drop this class, you should think about becoming something other than an engineer, because it isn't easy out there, guys. I'm gonna tell you that right now. All right. I know your other professors are really concerned about you guys liking them. I don't care. I've told you that before. I'm here to make sure that the people who want to learn really learn the subject. And I've got it down pat after 20 years. So if you don't like the way I'm doing it, complain to Dr. KK. He'll just tell you what I'm telling you. That's the class, and you're going to have to do it. All right. So let's go. Let's do the class. Let's go on to the first cool relationship, okay, which is really the central theme of this whole class, relational database management systems. And for this class, being an industrial engineering class, there is no relationship that is more important to us than what's called the category relationships. You know, as IEs, one of the things we're asked to do a lot is take data and group it, put it in some kind of format so that people could get a quick summary, a quick aggregation of information in that group of things. So if I'm talking about parts, you know, I've got a table of all the parts that my factory produces. And somebody says, I need to know how many angles we produced last month. If I have a field that's called part type, and I put angle in there, clip, bracket, in fact, we're going to do something like this tonight, okay? Then I could go in and I could sort based on those, or basically I could group based on those and sort if I want to, and bring up tallies for all the records that conform to that category. We categorize a lot, okay? I'll just give you an idea. I'm working on a database right now for Spirit, and it's not a grand database, but it's got over 17 categories on one subject. That's how many different ways they want to look at the same set of data, that I have to break it up into those. When I say categorize, think of a pie chart. You know, when you develop a pie chart, you get these slices, and the size of the slice is indicative of how many of something is in that slice, right? Well, we're kind of doing the same thing here. We're going to create reports later on where we will break things down by categories, basically. All right. A category could be type. And in that type, we could have many different kinds of values that we could categorize on. That's what we're going to do with category relationships tonight. They are definitely the easiest of the relationships. It's one of the reasons I start with it, is because if you get this one down, then the harder ones usually will come to you really quick. Also because, again, you will do this the most in this class and in life, creating category relationships. People are good who are good at this. I mean, honest to God, it's amazing how many times my students have told me, who are out there practicing, you know, I could just sit there all day writing category relationships and they would be happy with me. You know, it's that important to us as industrial engineers. So let's get into the assignment, or I'm sorry, into the lesson, the tutorial. Okay. And again, there's a compiled version of this out there. Depending on whether you have a 64-bit or a 32-bit machine, that tell you that indicates which one you need to run. I have a 32-bit machine, so I'm going to run this for you, and just so you can see what we're about to do. So let's go open up a data sheet for this table that's about parts, TBL part. That's the name of the table. And in this, I've got a part number, which is a unique identifier, which makes it an alternate key field, right? A single field alternate key, unique and required. I have a type. I have usages. I have these things that are like the amounts. These are like the fields we've worked with already. You know, we got amount needed. That's about that part. The amount on hand, that's about that part. Let's see what else is in there. Go down a little bit here. any notes about the part, and then if we had attachment data revisions like we usually have in our tables. Okay. But what we also have in here is we have other things about the part that are more constrained. In other words, they can only take on certain values. Those are what we call foreign key fields. Now we saw the other two keys, right? We saw the primary key, we saw the alternate key. Now I told you there's 3 types of keys. The other type of key is called a foreign key. There's some database purists would say they're really not keys, they're just receivers. You know, I'm going to use classical lingo here and say it's a key, all right? But you can have as many of them as you want in the table. You can have none. If it makes sense not to have a foreign key, if the table is not receiving information from anything else, from another data table, then you don't need them. But I want a table out there that basically has a list, basically a record for each kind of part type. And then I want to be able to receive the values from that table into this field here called type. And when I do, I want them to be in basically a drop-down list that I could also manage if I want to. I could bring up a form and actually add to it or change names or anything like that. And after I do that, I come back here and that would be available in the drop-down. All right. Now that's called a single pick foreign key field. You could do a multiple pick too. A multi-pick, it's called a multi-pick category relationship. These fields are part of what's called a category relationship. This one happens to have multiples that I could pick. We're going to learn how to do that right now. And you should have watched the tutorials on these. There's another one here, by the way, too. There's one for minimum inspection. It's a single field again. Sorry, single field. Boy, it's not picking that. Why not? You know, I noticed they have this problem with Zoom sometimes when things are in the corner. It doesn't always pick it. Boy, I'm not getting it. These always happen. Oh, I wasn't on the field. Sorry about that. I was on the caption. Anyway, but here I can pick the value for that. All right, so let's go in here and start building one. All right. So I'm going to take this one. This is my my file, my work file. And again, like I always do, I always make a copy of it just in case I make a mess up so I could go back and do it again. Now, I'm not going to do all the tutorial, all right? Again, you should have watched it. You should have watched the one that isn't narrated. What I'm going to do tonight is tell you about the things you saw, all right? So I'm not going to do both the single fields. I'm going to do one of them. You should know how to do them both by the time I'm done. And then I'm going to do the multiple one. And I'm going to point out things about it, okay? Things that weren't in the tutorial that was narrated. By the way, I would also recommend that you look at the video from last semester. I just watched it this morning. It was excellent. I'm just going to basically do the same thing here tonight. So, but it doesn't hurt to do it again. It doesn't hurt to see it twice too. Okay. So once again, if you get the enable content, enable it. It will always do that the first time you open it. Right? You'll see here that we have the objects that some of the objects that came over from the ball. And then there's actually a subject table that I've already completed for you. Okay, it's called part. All right, we'll explore all these objects in a second. Okay, but let's look at the part one for the part table first. If I open this up in design mode, you see that there's a field for the primary key that's always there that you never have to mess with. Okay, this was made from the template of the alternate key field. And so I made this pnum, part number, field. And then we have another part amount needed, part amount on hand. And then we have our 3 standard added fields that you never want to mess with. Okay, they're always there. All right. So basically I just took that subject table, fixed the alternate key, and added these other 2 fields. But now I want to add fields for those foreign keys. Let me go back and just show you this in data sheet mode. That's what I've got right now. All right. I want to add that type field. Okay. And let's see. I'm sure I got everything in place here. I'm going to close down my property sheet because I think it'll give me more space. Yes, it does. Good. All right. You know, again, I apologize. One of the problems I have is because of Zoom. Zoom wants to take up some of my screen, and sometimes it's always on the thing I want to work with. So this will give me more room to show you things like the SQL statement and all that. So here we go. I'm going to make a single field, foreign key, that is the type of the part. So I'm going to close down the part table first. Okay. This one right here, this is TLK receiver star category. TLK means lookup table. That's what they call the table that holds the values that you actually want to look up when you hit the drop down from the field. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to just going to do a copy, and then I'm going to do a paste. And I'm going to name that. First, I'm going to take the copy of off, make sure I don't have any space in front of it. Receiver. Receiver is the name of the subject that's receiving the value from the table, the category table. So the receiver, receives the category data. The receiver here is the part, right? Part is the subject. So think of it. I didn't put subject in there simply because we're going to learn later on in the semester that you could use category relationships on any kind of table, not just subject tables. All right. So I built this so it's kind of universal, work on any table right now. But anyway, the part table is going to receive this value, and it's going to represent the part type. So I'm going to put type in here. Okay. TLK, little, because it's the prefix that identifies that as being a lookup table. Part, it's the subject. Star, type being the category. What does the star mean? It doesn't mean a wildcard. Don't replace it with anything, all right? Star in this case means this is a one-to-many relationship. In other words, for every type of part I have, I could have many parts that could take on that type, right? I could have many parts that are angles, many parts that are brackets, okay? This is telling me right away, just from looking at this convention here, that I have a lookup table where the subject part, which is this table right here, TBL part, is receiving this value from this type category value. All right, and it is obviously a lookup relationship. It's a one-to-many. In fact, it's called a soft one-to-many. So that's good. I'm done. So click OK. You know what? You just did it. You just built the table that you need to hold the types. Okay. If I open that up in Design View, just to show you what's in there, and you'll see they're all going to look like this. They're all going to have your primary key. They're going to have a field called category, a field called description, display order, and data revisions. And you notice they all have a star, right? And star means it's universal. This isn't really being assigned. This field is not being assigned to anything except this table is what that means, all right? If that doesn't make sense to you, I'm just going to say this, and please hear this. Don't ever come in here and rename that field. In fact, you will never really have a need to ever come in here and do any work on it. All right. Now, people who get good at this, I will share with you, there is one thing in here, if you wanted to do it, you could do, and that's to give this table a description. And here I would just make it part type, and you don't need the star on it. Okay. All right, this is just a tag basically. All right, where this is used is later in the semester. I am going to show you that there's actually a way to automatically document your databases. It'll actually make a printout of the structure of all your databases. And if you put part type here, then when it comes to this table, it'll put that out as its title, part type. Okay, so that's one reason why you might want to do it. If you don't do it, I won't take off points. What I'm telling you is that after you do that copy and paste and you do the rename, you're done really on this table. You don't have to do any more structure to this. Do not add fields. Do not change fields. It's already done for you. All right. I think most of you will get that really quick. Okay. So truthfully, I could actually enter data into that field, into that table if I want to right now. I could open, in fact, I'll do that. I'm going to open it up right now, and you can see there's a data sheet there, and I could write, okay, one of my part types is angle. I'll put an angle in here to begin with. Okay. And now that's in there. And now if I went over there later on, when I put the drop down menu, angle would show up in that. I'm going to close this down for now because I'm going to show you another way to put information in there. And yet there's actually 3 different ways to do it. All right. Now, you notice that in the example, I hit the drop down and I said, if the value wasn't there, I can actually bring up a form and put the value in the form and then close the form down and it'll be there then in the drop down list. We need to build that form. It's called a lookup form. Just like this was a lookup table, we're going to build a lookup form that will be able to assume the values of that table. All right. And again, most of this is done for you. There's just a couple little things you have to do to make this work. And this is one of the beauties about this whole thing is how quick you can actually build these category relationships once you know how to do them. So I'm going to take this FLK receiver start category. I'm going to do a copy. I'm going to do a paste. And then you can see the copy of, take that off again, make sure you get all the spaces out of there. Again, we never want to have a space in our conventions. It will hurt things. All right. Now it's receiver start category. Again, part star type. It's the same name that you gave to the table that it's associated with. Part star type. All right. So now that object's there, but I still haven't associated it with this table. I still have to do that. So let's open this up in design view. We haven't seen a form before. This is our first form. I'm not going to go through everything about forms tonight. When we do dialogue, I'm going to actually show you in depth all the different parts of a form and all that. Tonight, you just need to know how to do one thing with forms because you don't even need to go in here and change any of this stuff that you see on the screen. This is, by the way, is called the canvas. This is where you actually drop in controls that are attached to your fields, drop in labels. You can set colors and make it look really pretty. And if you want to explore things like that, feel free. Okay, changing colors, but don't delete anything here. Don't try to add things to it, okay, as far as new fields. Just leave this as it is, okay? We do need to associate this with the table. To do that, you could come down here, probably somewhere in the what they call the footer section, okay? And do a right click. And you'll see form properties. Click on that, all right? Now, there's another way to do this. Again, you could go up here and you could just do properties like this. But when you do that, sometimes it won't be the form properties, it'll be something else. If you bring this up and this doesn't say selection type form, just hit this drop down list and find form, click there and get there. You want to be on the forms properties, okay? And you'll see that there's a lot of them here. We're going to learn about the important ones in this class, but tonight you only need to worry about 2 of them. And that's the very first 2. The one that says record source. This is our way of saying that this form belongs to this table. If you go over here with the drop down, you'll see that that table that we created, TLK part start type is there. You select that. Now that is bound to this form. That's what we say when we associate a form with a particular table. That table, the records of that table are now bound to this form. In other words, when I open this form up and I see multiple records, I'm going to see basically the records of that table in the fields that are described here, which just happen to be all the fields in that table. And then I also want to do what's called a caption for the form. Okay, it's receiver CAG, just like before. I'm going to get part is the receiver and type. Now, again, you don't need to put star in that one. Okay, this is just a label. And what it's going to do is this part, see right here, we have this tab that says FLK part star dot type. That's not very readable to an end user, is it? When I save this and I open it up in form view, that will say part type and that'll be done. That's all I have to do here. Save it, close it down. In fact, I'm going to open it up right now because I can do that if I want to. I don't have to have it just opening up from the field. I'm going to open it up and you'll see there it is. Okay, and it says part type up here. Actually, it isn't the tab, it's just a bar up here because this is what's called a dialog box. When it pops up, you can't do anything else except work with it. So you got to close it down to get to something else. All right. You see, we put the angle, we put angle in there before. I'm going to put another one there. I'm going to put bracket. Okay, I could do another one. I could do web grid. But if I try to do angle again, violation, right? We got two of the same value in a unique field in the alternate key field. So I don't want that one. So I'm going to get rid of it. I just hit, by the way, to do that, all I had to do was hit escape and it got rid of it. Escape will usually get rid of the last one you typed in. Hitting escape twice will get rid of the whole record. So be careful about that. I have to warn people. Please remind me to send them an email about that for the people that aren't here tonight. They need to know that. I know I didn't say that in the other video. If you start putting in a piece of data like that, oh, I didn't want to do that. I could hit escape and it'll get rid of that one. If I hit escape again, it gets rid of the whole record. It gets rid of up to what I last saved, basically. And since I hadn't saved that record, it got rid of the whole thing. So be careful. I had somebody a while back call me up and say, I just entered 50 fields worth of stuff and I lost my record. And I was like, well, what'd you do? And she goes, oh, I hit escape twice. Yeah, that's something you can't control. That's something that's built into Access. So just be careful about that. All right. But anyway, here we got our lookup form. So we got a lot of the neat stuff, the things you want to see done. Okay, but we still haven't built the relationship. Here's the important part now. We're going to create the foreign key field. So now I'm going to go up to the part table, go to design view. All right. I'm going to go to my single pick table. And there is a single field in here. I want you to take this and highlight it like that, the whole record. I did that by clicking on that little box over here. And then I want to do Control C. I'll do the full copy so you can see it. Copy. And then I'm going to come back over to part and just go down here somewhere past your fields that you already have and do a paste. All right. That just put in a field that's a template for the foreign key. Okay. You'll see it's got receiver category. It's got category over here. It's got all these curly bracket things. Remember, you always take the curly brackets. That means substitute something here. I want to substitute the receiver name, which is the name of this table, part, with that category I wanted to receive, type. So part, type. Whoops, didn't mean to take the star off it. If you do that, just put it back on. Part star dot type. I'm sorry, part star type. Okay. On the description, it's type. Okay, because this is the part table. So it knows this is the type for a part. If you want to say part type, feel free. The description is not urgent, but again, I do require you do it. Somebody asks, do I have to put the description? Yes, you do. Okay. Later, you're going to see when we use forms that when you go to look at the bottom of the screen, whatever you put for the description will show up at the bottom. It's a nice, handy tip, basically, for the person who's entering data about what that could be. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as the caption. You can write whatever you want here. Okay. But I usually just make whatever I'm going to make for the caption. So this is going to be type. And then down here on the caption, type. Now, somebody asked me, what if that's a required field? Well, you know what? I didn't say you had to do this on the tutorial, but I'm going to make it a required field just because. If it's a required field, all I have to do is come down here on its validation rule and say, is not null. Whoops. And then say, you must select, I'm going to say select because it's going to be coming from a drop-down menu, a type. Okay. And so now later on, if I try to save the record and I haven't picked that, it won't let me do it, right? Because it's a required field. It's also really good on these that are required to make sure you give some kind of indicator to say it's required. So I'm going to do that right here on the description. And I'm also going to do it on the caption. Okay. All right. I'm going to save it now just because I've been doing a lot of typing here, but I'm not done yet. Okay. Yeah. And again, when you get those things after you add a validation rule, it's going to say that you may have some problems with referential integrity, or you're going to have problems with fields that don't have values. That's because we already have records in this table. All right. And they don't have a value for that field yet. But now I could go back and I could add those into it anyway. All right. Just let me know there's basically records that don't have a value there. So you got to take care of it. All right. Because I should say it's required. All right. Now I need to be able to tell it, have that drop down menu and populate it with these values. To do that, there's another tab here on the field called Lookup. And if you go in here, you'll see that I've already started the query that will help you do this. Okay. In fact, there's only one thing you have to do in this entire query. And that's, again, I'm going to have to take down my property sheet so you can see this whole thing. See where it says from TLK receiver start category? You do that same substitution. Receiver, take off the curly brackets and make it part. And then category type. And you got to really watch that curly brackets. Sometimes it's hard to pick up, you know. Be careful not to erase the square brackets around that. It has to have square brackets around that. TLK part star type closing square bracket. All right. You basically just created the query now that will go out to this table and bring those fields back. But you're only bringing back the category field and the description field. I'm going to tell you about a little bit more about what's going on with this query in a second, but let's finish this up. Okay. The other thing you need to do here is let it know what form needs to pop up if they want to add or change any of the values of the type. And so that's our lookup form that we created. Right now, it knows about that because it exists out here as an object. So if I just go on this thing that says list items edit form, and I go all the way over to the right and hit the drop down on it, you'll see that our FLK part star type is there. And I'll pick that. I'm going to save that right now. All right. Then I'm going to go highlight this again, and I'm going to move it up into a place that makes sense in my scheme of things. Since I made this a required field, I'm going to make it right after the pnum now because they're both required fields. All right. So now if I go out here and look at it, you'll see that for all intents and purposes, it looks like it's working, but there's still one more step we have to do. If I go out here, here's the field, I hit the drop down, that query just ran, brought back the category and the description values. And I didn't have any descriptions on this. It wasn't a required field, but that was the angle on it. And if I need to populate, put more in here, I could hit this little ghost image and it opens up my lookup form, and I could add more to it. Now I will do that in a minute. Okay. But again, we are not done yet. Okay. While this mechanically is working, it's still not completely smart. We could still do things that could screw up our data because we haven't done what's called referential integrity. We have not set that. There is really no relationship here yet. All we've done is made a mechanism that pulls data and puts into another place, okay? We need to now say that this table, TBL part, and this table, TLK part star type, have a real relationship, and that relationship will enforce the integrity of the data that's shared between them. To do that, I'm going to close this down. Don't really need to close it down, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to close everything I got open, all right? And you go up to database tools. And there's this one called relationship. That opens up what's called the relationship window. It will come up blank if you don't have any relationships to start out with. And what I want to do is I want to put both of those tables in there first. So there's a couple ways to do this. One is to right click, do show table, and pick which ones I want and then say add. Easiest way, just take it, highlight it over here and drag it in. Now the part table's in there, and you can see it's got a listing of all its fields, right? That we saw before. And then we're going to do the part type one, and we're going to bring that in there. And it's got its fields. This is called schema. This is the schema for the TLK part star type table. This is the schema for the TBL part table. Together, they make up what's called our data model. All right. Now, sometimes we hear the whole thing called the data schema. That's fine. I mean, I don't care what you call it, just as long as you know what it does. This is a graphical depiction of the structure of your tables and the relationships between them. Right now, we don't have a relationship here, even though we've got those mechanisms built into it. We still need to create the relationship. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to build the relationship. You notice I've got my primary key. It's indicated to me by that little key, right? And it's already highlighted. If something else is highlighted like that, highlight that one. And then left click on that and hold it down, and then drag that over to where you are setting the foreign key field that you want to set the relationship on. I want to do it on LNG part star type dash record identifier. And I'm going to drop that in there. And you see what happens? I get this edit relationships come up here, and it's telling me that from part type, I'm taking its primary key field, and I'm trying to relate that to that part type record identifier field over here. I know you can't see that whole thing. I wonder if I can expand that out. No, I don't think I can. I think unfortunately, it just kind of truncates that, but it's all there. Trust me, okay? All right, but we still haven't done it. All that's saying is that there's an association between two. To set referential integrity, all I have to do is say enforce referential integrity. All right. Now, in doing that, there's two types. One is about what happens when a type changes. What happens on records that had already received that type? In other words, I've got angle in there as one of the choices, right? What happens if I go into TLK part star type and I change angle to something else? But I've used it in other records. I've already selected it. If I say cascade update, it will automatically update on any record that it's been assigned to. On category relationships, you always want to set that to yes. Okay, you always want cascade update on. Cascade delete, what that means is if I delete an angle as a category value, any record that I assigned it to in the other table would go away automatically. The whole record would just delete. That's pretty dangerous, isn't it? There will be some relationships we will see later in the semester where we want that to happen, where it doesn't make sense for what's called the child to exist if the parent goes away. But in this case, it doesn't make sense. Getting rid of a category is no reason to delete an entire data record in a subject table. So we always leave cascade delete off on category relationships. That's both the single pick and the multiple pick one. We leave it off. All right, now I'm going to say create, and you see what it did. It made this relationship that shows for every one record I have over here in part type, I could have multiple records. That's what the infinity sign means here. Multiple records over here that can take on that value on the foreign key field. Cool, huh? That wasn't really that much work. I know it sounded like a lot, but after you've done this a couple times, believe it or not, you can knock this out in a minute. Everything I just did, you can knock out in a minute, probably. All right. Now, usually when I'm over here, people start noticing things and they'll say, look at why is your attachment field got all these extra things in it? I'm going to explain that to you in a minute. Why attachment, again, is a different kind of field, and it's not like the others. Most of them, you'll always just have the field name, but on multiple, you're going to see we're going to have an extra little field that goes along with it too. They're usually indented, what's called the subordinate fields. All right. Don't worry about that right now, though. Okay. We have established this relationship now. Let's go see how it works. So, by the way, you have to save your relationship window. So just get in the habit. Whenever you do a change to it, hit save, and you can close it down, and then later on open it up again if you want to, and it'll still be there. Okay. So I'm going to go over to the part table and open it again in design view and get into the data sheet. I'm going to do a type, and let's start assigning it. So this one, I'm going to make an angle, and this one, I want to make a nozzle. Oh, nozzle's not in there. Okay, let's go here. Add nozzle. Nozzle And while I'm at it, I'm going to make another one, housing. Okay, that's good enough. Let's get out of there. And I'll assign this to nozzle, and I'll assign this one to angle also. And I'll assign this one to web grid. And hey, you know what? It's a required field. I got to have them in everything, right? So I'm going to put one here on housing. Let's say maybe I make a brand new one. All right, let's make a new one. And I'll skip it this time. And now I'm going to move off of that. And I should get a thing saying, oh, you must select the type. So I did the right thing. I put a thing on there and it's forcing me to select the type. So I'll do that and go on. Anyway, the other ones weren't required, so I could do that. This one was required, I did, because it's the alternate key. So I had to do that one. And I even give them a notice that this has to be 8 digits. So I had an input mask on there, obviously. All right. My boss comes in and says, you know what? We decided we're not going to call them angles anymore. We're going to call them clips. Go update the inventory, John. Well, you know, I've only got 6 records. That wouldn't take me too long. You know, just go in there and do it by hand, right? What if I had 1 million here? What if I had 1 billion in here? Okay. Well, yeah, I could select this and go up and do a search and replace. That's another way to do it. All right. But you know what? 1 billion records, it would even take a search and replace a while to do it. Here's another way to do it. You come back here. Sometimes that thing doesn't show really well. Here we go. All right. And I could do this from any one of them really. And I could even go back to the table and do this, or just open up the lookup form by itself. But I'm going to open up the lookup form, and I'm going to change angle to be clip. Now I'm going to close it down, and look what happened. Both places where I had it assigned angle automatically changed to clip. Handy, huh? Watch this. Let's remember one of these. Well, let's remember what haven't I assigned in there yet? Is there something I haven't assigned? I think I've assigned them all. No, I haven't assigned bracket yet. Okay, I haven't assigned bracket. Remember bracket. Okay, we're going to close this down now. I'm going to go back to the table itself. And again, I could do this from the lookup form. In fact, I'll do it from the lookup form. You know how to do it from a data sheet. I'll do it from the lookup form. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get rid of, which one was it? Bracket. We don't have anything with bracket. I'm just going to highlight the record and I'm going to hit the delete key. It's going to say I'm about to delete one record. It's warning me just in case I really didn't want to do that. I'm going, oh yeah, I want to get rid of that. Went away, right? No problem, because it wasn't assigned to anything ever. All right. So deleting that record's no big deal. But if I try to remove clip now, I've got 2 things that were assigned that value. I'm going to go in here right now. I'm going to highlight it, hit delete, and say the record cannot be deleted or changed because table TBL part includes related records. That's what referential integrity just did for me. It kept me from really screwing something up. I can't delete those records until I go over there and it take off that value clips, basically. And then I'd be able to delete clips. All right. If I had cascading delete on when I set the referential integrity and I just tried to do it, it would first warn me you're about to delete a record, but it would also say, and all related records in TBL part. And if I did that, not only would this disappear, but anywhere where it was used in TBL part, those records would go away too. Boy, that's dangerous, isn't it? Think about, we only have a few fields in here, but sometimes you will have tables that will have hundreds, maybe even thousands of fields in them. You know, if you're out there in the big world doing real stuff, I can tell you right now, the part table for that Spirit is so big that I don't think anybody's even tried to count how many fields there are, and that there are that many. I would imagine at least 10,000 easily. Okay. Can you imagine if you deleted a record accidentally this way? Because I had this innocuous field way out there that happened to have a relationship on it where I had cascading delete on, and it got rid of not only it, but all the other records that had that taken on that value. Oh, would they be mad at you? All right. You don't want that to happen. So that's why the cascade update, yes, we want to have it on category relationships. Cascade delete, we don't. We want that off. All right. Now I'm going to do a multi one, and I'm going to do this one really quick because I don't have a lot of time, first off. But let's make one for, what did I say? Minimum, is it minimum? It's usages, right? Usages was the other thing I used it for. So I'm going to make a table called usages. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And again, in fact, I'm not going to talk very much. You can just watch me do it. Part, and then usage. So these are, in other words, assemblies or something that the part's used on. And again, that table's done. I don't have to do anything else. If I wanted to, I could go change the description, but I won't do that here. And then let's build this one. Copy the lookup form. Part. Usage. Okay. And while I'm in, I may as well put some values in here. Compressor assembly, vacuum, vac chamber, we'll call it. Tension assembly. Okay. Something like that. I don't know. Okay. And now I want, instead of using the single pick, I'm going to use a multi-pick. So again, I'm going to open up part, and I'm going to go to multi-pick now and open it up. It works exactly the same way. You highlight the field, you come in here and you drop it in, and then you modify it. Now, the one thing that's a little bit different on a multi-pick is it's part again, but because this could have multiple picks, instead of just saying usage, I'm going to say usages. Okay, remember I told you, we usually always keep things singular, but this is a case where the grouping is more than one thing. So we'll say usages. And again, make the category usages. Yeah, I know the name of the table and the form were usage, but that's because they only deal with one at a time. Here we're going to be dealing with several at a time. Okay, and then we're going to have the as a category usages. And I will not make this one required. Okay, this is not going to be a required field. I'm going to save it right now, and then I'm going to go to its lookup. And again, same thing. Look at from, and then let's make the receiver part and the category usage singular, because we're actually saying the name of the table here, the lookup table, usage. And then down here for the, I got a movie again, for the, I got part usage for the lookup form. Okay, that should do it. Let's move it somewhere. Let's put it maybe after the amount on hand, I guess. Maybe. Yeah, that's good. Let's do that. All right. And let's close it down. And close both of them down. And I'm going to go back to my relationship window, and that TLK part usage that I created, I already got part in there, so I don't need to put it in again. In fact, you don't want to put it in again. You want to just put part usage in here. There's the table for that. And now I'm going to establish the relationships by clicking that. I got to push this over so you can see the whole thing. You might notice that this one comes up with a thing called dot value. I'll explain that in a second, okay? But that's what you really want to put this on, is the value. If you try to put it on the other one that says record identifier by itself, it won't let you do it anyway. In fact, let me show you that. If I go here and I highlight that, drag it over, and I try to put it, see how it's got that no symbol on here? But as soon as I put it down here, it allows it, okay? Click that on there and see it's going to put it in the right place. And again, referential integrity, cascade update on, create, It's done. We got the relationship done now. Save the window, closing it down, go into the data sheet. Now I go over here and I look for that field. It's over here, usages. And by the way, you always expand it so you can see more. In fact, this one will want to see more because we have multiple values. I go in here and I hit the drop down. I didn't put any values in this yet, so I can do it right from here. Oh, I did. Did I pick the wrong one? I bet I picked the wrong. Wait a minute. What happened, Aziz? Where did I put those values? You know what? I put them in here. Oops. Put them in. I know what I didn't do. You know what I didn't do? I know what I didn't do. Let me go back. Sorry about that. Let me go fix it. All right. What I didn't do was the properties for this, I bet. Yep, I didn't. See how quick you know things when you do it a lot? Part usage is part usage. Okay, I didn't put the form in the right one. So it was actually putting it on the ball object. Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. That's okay. I can do it from here. Let's go back and do it from there. Okay, now it should work. All right, let's go back and go to usages, hit the down. And now I'm going to put some values. I'm just going to put some values in here. Compressor assembly, bracket assembly, bulkhead, and web gantry, something like that. Okay. All right. And now when I hit the drop down, you'll see that they're there and they got these little boxes in front that let me do multiple picks. By the way, you can scroll over to see the description. I can make this bigger and then I'd see more. Yeah, I'm going to do the bracket assembly and compressor assembly for this one. And you see what it did. It put compressor assembly, comma, bracket assembly. This one, I'll just pick one, compressor assembly. Put one in there. It's not a require field. I don't have to put anything there. I can skip them. And again, I could do multiple. I could do them all if I want to. Pretty neat, huh? So this is a way that you can actually have multiple categories that are assigned to one record. Now, for those of you who've been really paying attention, reading ahead, you might remember that when I showed you the instructor references thing, I said you should never have lists in a field. We just built a list. That's not normal. Okay. It turns out, even though it looks like a list, it really isn't. This is the cool thing about Access. Access, as far as I know, is the only database system that handles this situation, what they call a multi-pick, the way they do it. Okay. Now, it could be that I haven't looked at Oracle and the other guys in a while. They may have adopted it, but this is one of the interesting things that Microsoft actually added to Access that I think is one of its neater things. This is actually a many-to-many relationship. A part could have many usages, and a usage could be on many parts. We have compressor assembly on several of the parts. It's really a many-to-many relationship, not a one-to-many like the single pick is. All right. But Dr. Huffman, when you showed us that in the tools, it looked like a one-to-many, just like the other one. Yes, it does. Because here's what happened really on that. Behind the scenes, Access created what's called a junction table that actually has the values associated for each record individually. That's what this value thing is really doing here. It's like a subset of the table. You think of your record having other records after it, okay? And it could take on any value from here, all right? You didn't have to do it. In fact, you can't even get to it. There is little you could do to manipulate that. Now, there is actually a way to query on it, I found out. I discovered that last semester. But if you use a multiple field, the cool thing is you don't have to worry about building the junction table or the junction relationship. It's building it for you. Now, I know you don't know what that means. We will learn that when we get to subject relationships and we actually create many to many among different subjects. We will actually have to build our own junction table. But for now, that's how easy it really is, just to create single pick and multiple pick category relationships. Let me look at my notes really quick just to make sure I didn't forget to tell you something here. Oh, I do. I want to go back to the part. Let me save this just to make sure. I always save, even though I know I don't need to. I still do it. Okay, I'm going to go up here, hit design view, and I'm going to go back to one. I'll just go to the type, and I'm going to bring up its lookup again. Lookup tab, and you see the row source. We have this thing that says select blah blah blah, and I said that's a query. All right, there's another way to look at this. This is actually what's called the SQL statement. I told you about structured query language. In fact, a lot of people, when they talk about the type of databases we're building, they'll call them SQL databases. They really mean it's a relational database. Okay, SQL is a universal language that all relational database, or I should say most relational databases have adopted. Now, sadly, they've also decided to each make their own variant of it. Okay, so most of it works from one to the other, but they sometimes will have something specific in theirs that may not be shared. Good example, the crosstab query that is in Access is not shared by others. All right, not all of them anyway. So that's one of the reasons why I don't use it in this class, because it just will confuse the heck out of you, and there's other ways to do what it wants to do. All right, but this select query, I don't, it used to, there was a time when I used to have to, the students have to memorize this code. This was the coding that we had to do in this class. You don't have to do that anymore. Microsoft's one of their great gifts to the world was something that they called the query by example grid, where you basically create a grid that you could drop your fields in. So you see up here, I'm putting it down here so you see it better. This is the table that this query comes from, because we said that in the SQL statement. Here are all the fields that it has. So we see the record identifier, we see the category, we see the description field. And then we got this thing that basically lets me put an order in the field and then lets me sort ascending by category. I'll go back to those in a second and show you how those work. All right. So it also tells me that I'm only showing 3 fields here: the primary key, the category, and the description. Really? Did we see the primary key when we hit that drop down? Did we see that arbitrary number, that arbitrary integer that meant nothing? No, we didn't. So I'm going to close this out. By the way, if you want to see, it actually generates the SQL code for you on the fly. If I go up here, if I go up here to views, I look at SQL, there's the SQL code for that now. Excuse me. I go back to design view, it's still there. So I could really work from here if I want to, but you're just making that one substitution. It's a lot easier just to type it in right there. Don't try to do it here. It gets to be way too much work. All right. And I could view it. That actually ran the query. If I hit this deal right here, that this little thing, it runs it and shows me what it's bringing back. So it shows me it's actually bringing back that our primary key field. How come I didn't see that? Well, it turns out, I close this down, it is there. It's just that I told it not to show it. Right here where it says the column widths, the first one, now that would be, the primary key would be 1, the category is 2, and then the third one would be the description. I'm saying don't show that primary key field, just show the category and description. And because that's set to 0, Access by default will show you the one that first thing that it can show you, which is the category. Tricky, huh? What does that mean? It means we're actually really storing the value of the primary key on that field, not the name angle, not the name bracket. We're storing 1 or 3 or whatever their primary key field is. In fact, I'm going to change this. I'm going to make it 1 just so we could see it, just so I could expose it. I'm going to have to change the overall size too, so you get the whole thing. All right. By the way, somebody noticed who's looking ahead said, how come you make this 0.25 bigger than this adds up to? And I said, because sometimes I have to scroll and it gives me room for the scroll bar. Okay. It's a little tip there. That's in my notes too. All right. But let's go back now. I'm going to go back and look at this in datasheet view and look what happened now. I don't see those. I don't see angle here like I did, or clip. Okay. Yeah, it shows it here when I hit the drop down, but storing, that's what's really being stored in that field. That making that 0 tells it don't show that, show angle. Why was it important to put the primary key? Because that relationship now is optimized. I'm not really typing angle in that field over and over and over. I'm just putting 1 in there. And then when I do that mass update, if I was to change angle to clips like I did, it just knows it because it's associated with that primary key. This is one of the reasons why I use a surrogate primary key. It is incredibly fast to the end user. Believe it or not, we could have just now had 800 trillion records in there, and they would have instantaneously all updated because it was really just an alias that needed to be associated. It wasn't a substitution of a value. Very neat. Very neat. Okay. There was something else I wanted to say about that. What was it? I think that's it. The primary key is actually stored. Yeah. Okay. There was something on the query. Oh, I know what it was. Okay. So the other thing we didn't do, let's go over to one of these. I'm going to type again. Maybe my company makes a certain type of part more than other ones. I could create what's called a display order. Maybe I make nozzles more than I make anything else. So I could give it a 1 and a housing 2, and it's going to go lowest to highest. It's going sorted that way, basically. I can make that 7. I can make this 30, 20, 34. Something I do a lot is I say other or unknown. Maybe I just don't know and I don't want it to be null. I can make that 0. Starts at 0. Well, you can't put negative numbers in here, but you can start at 0. And sometimes I'll make not applicable. Or maybe if there's some situation where I just wouldn't want to have a part type, and I can make that big number, make sure it's always going to come in last in the sort. So now when I do that, I come back here and I open that up and I hit the drop down, and you'll see they got a different order. They got the order I gave it. All right. The other thing, I didn't put a description on anything. If I wanted to do that, I could do that. I could go in here and say a lawn part with legs is a clip. Well, maybe it's a short part. Short part with clip. Legs is a clip. Move off of that. And now when I open that up, you should see that as a description for clip. Why is that now open? There you go. Yep. Short part with legs. Pretty neat, huh? Again, it seems like a lot. I know it's a lot to explain, a lot to take in, but I think after you do these 2 or 3 times, you'll be able to do them in your sleep. It really isn't that difficult to do. So in the last couple of minutes here, I just want to go through really quick on the homework assignment. I think it's pretty understandable the way it is. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Again, you must use the file from this semester. It's out there on Blackboard. I think I sent it to you already. There is a compiled version of this, so you can see how yours ought to turn out if you do things right. But basically, I wanted to go in here and show you the instructions. Wow. Zoom really takes up a lot of resources, obviously. Come on. Okay, here you go. So the task is very similar. You know, I still want you to do validation rules. Okay, you're going to build fields, okay, just like you did last time. And again, the primary key fields there, you will create a alternate key field based on that template that's in there. You'll have other fields that you'll set. So the date that you send the application, and that's a required field, and you'll default it to now and make it short format. And then you'll have another one in here for, there's some other ones at the bottom here for this other last status and the contact details, salary, blah, 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 blah. And then finally you have those ones that are always here. So the ones in gray are the ones that you don't have to do anything for. It's already there. All right. You'll build those other fields, and you will also build the foreign key fields that I want you to build. So here's a single pick one that's required. That will be the recipient type. Okay, what this is it's a table that you're sending out applications to companies or to schools or whatever else. Okay, you're sending basically, when I say application, I don't mean a software application. I mean, you know, you're applying to school or you're applying to a job or something like that. You're sending them out and you want to track them. Okay, you want to know who you sent them to, what date you sent them on, what the reply was, you know, what type of application it was, and all that. So you're going to build something called, it's the application type. So you're going to have a foreign key field for that. And I give you exactly what the records of that drop down ought to look like. Okay, the category, the description, and the sort order on it. Okay, you'll have what artifact that you actually sent, and this will be in multi-pick because you might send more than one thing to a person. All right, so this will be a multi-pick. Again, I give you all the records that need to populate those lookup tables, and then another single pick foreign key field to be a status for this thing. Okay, now on some of these, I think all of them, in fact, I use an other. Is it on there? Other. Yeah, other recipient. Okay, so think about that on a form where you got a lot of choices, and then at the end they say other, and you check other, okay, or you picked other, okay, and then they usually say, tell us what other could be. Okay, so you want a field in there that they could populate if they actually checked other. Now, I'm not asking you to constrain this in any way to say, oh, this has to be checked in order for you to put a value here. We're just going to make it a flat field for now. But if they do pick other, then there's a field where they can record what that other value is. In other words, it might be something that's not in the list. Okay, and it be something that the database manager knows ought to be in the list. Okay, you of course have the ability to add it to the list through the lookup form if you desire to do that. But whatever you do, put the field in there. It's not a required field, but make sure it's in there. All right, and I think that's it. Okay. You will add 5 more fields. I don't care what kind they are, you know, don't make them attachments though, please. All right. And even memos, I would limit it to maybe just one other memo field. All right. But 5 other fields, and one of those 5 fields has to be an additional foreign key lookup field. All right. I want you to design one yourself and put it in there. I'll tell you right now, it's mainly the foreign keys that Aziz and Ben and I are going to look at and figure out if, you know, how you're doing. But we're going to look at the whole thing too. Don't blow off the other fields, okay? This gives you a chance. Again, look at the results. Look at the solution file from the last one. If you have problems, look how I did it.